camera speed. Now, here is a motion picture film.
Good evening, and welcome to Real Movies. Tonight, you're invited to join a party in one of the most haunted houses in the United States. Spend the night and you'll receive $10,000, though you might lose your wits. Released in 1959 and starring the iconic Vincent Price, tonight's film is House on Haunted Hill. House on Haunted Hill tells the story of Frederick Loren, Vincent Price, a wealthy eccentric who, along with his fourth wife Annabelle, throws a party for a number of strangers in a haunted house. If all the guests stay till morning, everyone gets $10,000 each. Sounds simple enough. Well, it would be, were it not for Elijah Cook's Watson Pritchard, a fearful neurotic convinced the house is haunted after his brother was murdered there by his wife. So when the ceiling starts dripping blood, it becomes clear it's going to be a sleepless night. The film was written by Rob White, a prolific American author fondly remembered by the baby boomer generation, with William Castle in the director's chair. William Castle was the man when it came to B-movies and cheap thrillers. Most famously, he was behind some of the best remembered gimmicks of 50s cinema. Vibrators in the seats, 3D glasses, and a choose-your-own ending were all employed by Castle on a series of horror films. House on Haunted Hill is no exception, and during theatre screenings, a skeleton would swing down over the audience at the appropriate moment. Castle would later go on to act as producer on one of the most unsettling horror films ever made, Rosemary's Baby. As a horror film, it must be said that House on Haunted Hill is naturally old school in its approach. By modern standards, it really isn't scary, and even for the time, it was a pretty sanitised sort of horror. But this was the era when a horror film meant something for the kids. Creepy, but not blood-curdling. Jump scares were the order of the day, and House on Haunted Hill delivers on those right out of the gate. Night of the Living Dead was nearly a decade away, after all. There are some interesting concepts here, namely the acid bath, a pretty gruesome idea applied with some brilliant effects. The cast is eclipsed, then as now, by the supreme talent that was Vincent Price. Alongside Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, Vincent Price defined horror in the 1950s and 60s, a classic era of movie scares. It's Price that sells this film. It's been said that House on Haunted Hill is a camp classic, but not camp in the British sense, rather the American feeling, which is to say, cheesy. But when Vincent Price speaks, you believe every word, you hang on every sentence. There are some pretty bog-standard performances here. Richard Long is the classic all-American, and Carolyn Craig is the screaming damsel in distress. The film is short on character development and long on screams. Very long on screams. But it's Vincent Price you came to see, and it's Vincent Price you get, rooting for him as ever, even when his motives are sinisterly unclear. His tense chemistry with his on-screen wife Carol Omart is palpable, and Omart is just as watchable. In the classic black and white, her blonde hair is startling, and it's not hard to see why she was a favourite to cast in horror and noir films. I would encourage you to see the film as originally screened in all its monotone glory. The colour takes away something from what is an enjoyable film, now free to watch in the public domain. And that's the thing, if you stick with it, House on Haunted Hill is an enjoyable film, but you do have to stick with it. It's weighed down by a great dumping of exposition within the first act, and arguably it's the fact this is a Vincent Price film that keeps you watching. It feels slow, which is strange given it's only an hour and a quarter. If you can get to the severed head, then you'll be sucked in from there, as suddenly tension that has been absent arrives late. The film clearly takes a leaf out of Agatha Christie's books, particularly And Then There Were None, but the script lacks the substance of Christie's works, replacing it with classic kitsch horror, which, by the climax, is no bad thing. Jump scares abound that leave you momentarily startled before laughing at how silly it all is, somewhere between Christie and Scooby-Doo. It's a film that, come the credits, I realised I would have enjoyed more in a darkened, packed theatre, with a skeleton swinging from the ceiling and the tense anticipation of the audience heightening the scares as the music builds to the inevitable. A movie from a different time that was designed for the theatrical experience, with old school scares, a mystery that gets more intriguing, and a classic screen legend. Keep it cult and follow Vincent Price as we enter The House on Haunted Hill.